Now, the EFF has called on President Cyril Ramaphosa to step aside and hand over tomorrow's parliamentary question and answer session to his deputy, David Mabuza. This in light of a February 2020 robbery at the president's Palapala farm in Limpopo, where $4 million was allegedly stolen. Ramaphosa is scheduled to address Parliament on the progress government's undertaking in his State of the Nation address in February. The EFF says it doesn't rule out disruptions tomorrow if Ramaphosa went ahead to address parliamentarians. Joining us now is the party's Deputy President, Floyd Shivambu. Floyd, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for joining us tonight. You had a press conference yesterday. The invitation firstly said you were going to comment about developments in the country. You opened it up by playing a video of the alleged robbery at the farm of the president in Limpopo. First, it is a video that was already in public domain, but in terms of your critical thinking around it, why did you play it to open the presser, and what did you want to highlight, having done your own critical analysis, which I believe you were already in possession of that video from the comments from the leader of the party, even before it went out, and he says he was waiting for whoever was responsible for it to take ownership of it.
No, look, we played the video because we wanted to put out in the public certain aspects which are currently not in dispute. That one, that there was a burglary in the house of Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa's farm called Palapala. That burglary happened in February 2020, and that millions of US dollars were stolen from that farm, which he does not dispute. And one of the factors and facts that arise out of that is that those who stole the money transferred, after having converted the dollars into rands, more than 6 million rands to Namibian accounts, and that is when the Namibian authorities got to pick up that is some unlawful money movements that has been happening, but also to demonstrate that instead of utilizing the criminal justice system and the legal systems of South Africa of how you respond to a crime, Mr. Ramaphosa chose a gangsterism route of dealing with the crime, of going to look after the people who stole money from his farm by himself without involving the police, because there was no police case that was opened, there was no docket that was opened to chase after those people. So he went himself with aspects of the security system, the intelligence and the police, who were not even permitted to look after those people, to try to retrieve some of the money that has been stolen. But what is very clear now and apparent is that he chose the gangsterism route because he did not want to be held accountable of the millions of foreign currencies that has been found in his farm. Either it's because that money has been generated illegally, and that is the most possible likelihood that that money was generated illegally from illegal sources, domestically and globally, and that he was choosing that route because he had not declared that he has got so much money in his farm, which the affidavit of the former Director General Fraser says is between 4 and 8 million US dollars. So that is a lot of money which has been stored in the farm of the president. And then that is why we had to then deal with the issues that are not in dispute in terms of what happened. And of course, he has come out in public to say that the money is a bit lower than what is in the affidavit of DG Arthur Fraser. But we have to be given proper accountability as to why is a president storing so much money in his farm, and what was it for, where did it come from, why was it not declared, why did he choose the gangsterism route to then resolve a crime that has happened in his farm. Yeah. And that is basically what we wanted to deal with from the beginning in terms of our press conference yesterday. And then we then came to say that for proper answers to all these questions, we need a proper investigation that is not going to be intimidated by the fact that the subject matter in this investigation is a sitting head of state. He has to step down as the President of the Republic to allow the criminal justice system to investigate him thoroughly so that we can know where does this money come from. It is not true that it is not money of corruption. We do not know if that money doesn't come from bribes of people who have been doing business with the state. We do not know if that money does not come from the foreign currency reserves of the South African Reserve Bank. So there is no certainty that is there. And the only way to could handle that is if we can have a proper investigation that is not going to be intimidated by a sitting head of state. That is why Cyril Ramaphosa must step down. He chose the gangster route, but now the information is out in the public. He must be held accountable, and he cannot be held accountable when he is still in office.
Yeah. Is that a dispensation that you're saying you're putting specifically for the head of state to do? Because, I mean, there are a lot of people, you yourself, you know, recently you've been through court, you were accused, you were later acquitted. There are other charges that many of your leaders are facing in courts. Are you saying everyone who is facing accusation must step down, or are you saying this is something that is special for the president?
No, look, it is Cyril Ramaphosa who has come out in public to say they even have a policy in his own organization that if there is legitimate allegations against you as a public office bearer, particularly those who are in government, for you to clarify yourself, you must step aside so that you do not interfere with the investigations. There was a Minister of Health who had to step down before he was even charged by the police, before even a police case was opened against him. And he stepped down at the height of the COVID infections. He was the voice on COVID infections. Zulim Kize had to step down to say that if there's ever going to be a case opened against me, or if there's going to be investigations conducted against me, let me be in a neutral space where I do not have a position of authority to could influence whichever direction the processes of investigations and the outcome thereof. So Ramaphosa has to step down so that the criminal justice system has to investigate him fairly. And remember that if you look closely into the number of laws that could have been violated in the entire exercise, it's a lot of laws that could have been violated. Prime being the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, which deals with money laundering, and the Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act. Also the Criminal Procedures Act, because he chose to replicate, to copycat the police functions without the necessary permissions. There's also the allegations of torture, there's allegations of bribery, there's allegations of violation of immigration laws, there's so many allegations of violations of foreign currency regulations. A variety of laws have been violated under the custodianship and auspices of Cyril Ramaphosa. So all these government agencies have to independently investigate a sitting president, and it cannot be that he remains in office when such is happening. If he is truly a man of integrity, let him step aside and allow the law enforcement agencies to investigate him thoroughly like other people have been doing so. Let him do the same thing so that we are able to know just what happened, because we cannot have unexplained millions that have been stolen, are kept in his farm, and there is nothing done about it. There are no laws for certain people in South Africa. We are all equal before the law in South Africa. There is no presidential immunity in South Africa. He must be held accountable. He must be questioned. He must be given a warning statement. He must appear in court to answer to all these questions that are left hanging over his head, so that we've got clarity that we do not have a gangster and criminal head of state.
Seeing that has not happened. So you mentioned, for example, the former health minister. He was already implicated in an SIU report. We indicated to the president, look, I'm going to challenge that, but I'm going to step down so that I don't taint the office. Would the EFF not prefer at least one of those agencies, either SARS or the forensic regulator, Treasury, to look and come up with some report, and then at least based on law and based on the processes of Parliament at least, or even the public protector report for that matter, then you would have constitutional legal ground to say that the president must now step down?
No, the reality is that there are certain facts that are not disputed thus far, even by himself. And one of those facts is that there was money, like a lot of money, foreign currency that was stored in his farm. He has not disputed that fact. He has not disputed the fact that there was his police service or his private army chose an unlawful route to try to retrieve the monies that were stolen in his farm. Yeah. And that is against the law. That is conclusively against the law. There is no dispute about that. And that has to be taken through a thorough investigation and accountability so that we are able to then clarify what just happened in detail in terms of what happens. And that cannot be done if he still remains in office. Yeah. It will not be fair on all the people who are involved in the criminal justice system to be investigating a sitting head of state who has got enormous power to could intimidate them, to could influence them in whatever direction. So that is basically the point that we're raising, that let him step down.
That you know, so that we do not know. I mean, in fact, the president of the EFF saying there's more. Right. So is there something that you are privy to that we do not know? For example, the allegations of abduction and torture and so forth have not really been proven. They are still at this particular point allegations. But we do know the president says, I reported the matter to the Presidential Protection Unit for them to investigate. What route they followed in as far as investigation, that is something that would still need to be tested.
Look, there's a lot of information which the courts have been even trying to hide from so many people for the longest time. There is still the unexplained CR17 bank statements, which he claims he was not aware of, whilst there were millions, actually almost R1 billion, if not more than R1 billion, that was deposited into his accounts. There was lots of cash movements. There was lots of even foreign currencies that were given to him to buy the ANC conference. That we are aware of, but the courts have been trying to shield him from accountability for the longest time. But now here is a police case that has been opened against him. He must come out in the open to explain each and every step. The courts have been treating Cyril Ramaphosa with kids' gloves because they serve a certain interest out of this. And there are so many things which are like quite apparent and clear, that he was directly involved even in the CR17 bank statements. Remember that part of the things that he did with that man was to deposit money himself from the CR17 bank accounts into the accounts of EFF members of parliament, whom we later on recused. Part of the monies that he was receiving is monies that were transferred to build him a house in Fraser in the Western Cape, a huge mansion which was paid out of that, but he comes out in the public to say that he's not aware of it.
He's not looked into those.
And then he says that he's not aware of it because
they put him aside from those bank statements. He's never looked at it.
That is not true. That is not true at all. But the criminal justice system of South Africa, including the courts, have been shielding him for the longest time. And we do not want a situation where, even on this case where there's prima facie evidence that he's involved in wrongdoing, the judiciary is still going to protect him because they are afraid that he's a sitting head of state. Yeah. We do not want that to happen. That is why we're making a legitimate and proper call that Cyril Ramaphosa must step down as a president. If he is not guilty, he must go and explain himself to the system, and then he will be exonerated. But thus far, all evidence points to the fact that he was complicit or the main protagonist in the crimes that were committed in his farm and in Namibia and everywhere else where they were hunting down the people who stole what appears to be stolen money as well that was stored in his farm.
Will you be allowing him to speak tomorrow?
Look, what we do all the time as EFF, we do not, and we have never disrupted Parliament as the EFF. What we do is that we hold the executive accountable. We use the rules and regulations of Parliament to hold whoever is a member of the executive accountable. That is what the Constitution of South Africa obliges us to do. So all the times we did that with former President Jacob Zuma, when there were certain questions that were not clear in terms of what happened around the Guptas and Nkandla and all of those issues. We then dealt with it much more effectively and were able to nip in the bud the crisis that defined former President Jacob Zuma. We can't fold our arms now and not do anything when it is Ramaphosa who is in office. Ramaphosa is not God. Ramaphosa is not untouchable. This thing must come to an end. He must be held accountable. He must come to Parliament and account as to why didn't he tell Parliament that he is storing millions of US dollars in his farm? Why didn't he tell Parliament as to all the activities that have happened about a crime that was committed in his farm? On the 9th of February 2020. On the 14th, he was addressing Parliament in the State of Nation address in 2020. Why didn't he disclose that in Parliament? How many times has he appeared in Parliament without disclosing a criminal activity which had to be dealt with? Remember that since we got to Parliament as the EFF, part of the issues that we have been raising is the issue of illicit financial flows. We have been pushing all institutions to act decisively against illicit financial flows. All the institutions, the Reserve Bank, SARS, the Financial Intelligence Center, we have been asking them as to what happens.
Yeah.
And what appears to be the case now is that Ramaphosa, the sitting head of state, who is supposed to be the custodian of our constitution, of our laws, is engaged in illicit financial flows. How are you going to call to order all these other criminals who are engaged in illicit financial flows if a sitting head of state is involved in illicit financial flows of moving foreign currencies into the country, getting it stolen and trying to retrieve it from other territories? That cannot be acceptable. So we will utilize all the time the institutions and the rules that are provided by our democratic system to hold Cyril Ramaphosa accountable. Right. So that we're not taken for granted, because if this thing is left to pass like this, then there is no rule of law in South Africa, there's a rule of individuals, and we can never allow that to be the case.
Let's take a break. We'll continue then with the Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Party, Floyd Shivambu, in just a moment. Back with you tonight, you're in Focus, Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405. Thanks for staying on. With us still, the Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Floyd Shivambu, on a number of issues. I know you do not want to be drawn to other issues that are happening in the country during your press conference, because I suppose that particular press conference was primarily for you to raise this issue. But, of course, it coincided with the arrest of the Guptas in Dubai. Do you have reason to suspect that was a disruption, or have you sought your mind around it and that particular arrest and what it means?
No, look, it is a step in the right direction if the Guptas have been arrested. But the manner in which it was announced was an attempt to divert South Africa from the fact that Ramaphosa is alleged to have been involved in corrupt activities of money laundering and of subverting the state, of trying to enforce the laws outside of the necessary legal systems. So that was a diversion, because also the manner in which the Department of Justice is explaining the issue of the arrest of the Guptas, it's not adequate. It's not even ready to could be explained, because one, they do not even have the charge sheet that they are preferring against the Guptas. If they were preferring charges, they would have charged some of their local associates who are here in South Africa, are not hiding anywhere in Dubai or somewhere in Dubai and all of those things. But two, one of the spokespersons of the Department of Justice went to one of the television stations to say that it will take 2 to 4 years or more than that. Yes, to say they're going to have more than 4 years to try to extradite them, because there's a legal process that still has to be followed. They had thought that such is going to divert us from the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa is accused of corruption, and we're not going to be shifted away from that particular reality. We're going to stay on this matter until it is properly resolved. Jacob Zuma tried that with us.
I wanted to say, is that the strategy you want to take?
Yeah, like Jacob Zuma tried that with us, yes.
So we can't look at all corruption all at the same time?
No, it has to be looked into. And remember that we in the EFF were the only ones who spoke against the Guptas much more firmly. The rest, they arrived very late when we then said that we have got a criminal syndicate that is running this country. We are the ones who went to stop Jacob Zuma from speaking in Parliament, asked him questions about the Guptas. We led the Gupta Must Fall campaign in South Africa, and we ultimately got to succeed in that particular mission. So we can't, of course, relegate that into an insignificant issue. But the manner in which it is being dealt with now was an attempt to divert the attention of society from the fact that Ramaphosa has got a case to answer. He must respond to all the allegations that have been made against him. There are certain things which are now beyond doubt, which is not disputed. He must now come to explain as to how his activities and actions have not violated not just domestic law, but so many other international laws and agreements which South Africa is part of, inclusive of the Financial Action Task Force, which combats illicit financial flows and money laundering.
Yeah.
He must respond to that much more
What do you make of
in terms of what happens?
The explanation given that this is money of the sales of game on his farm? We know that there are certain outfits in the country, particularly tourism outfits, that have got particular permits that they're given to trade in foreign currency. I'm not saying that is what Palafala Farm is. It could not be, and I don't know whether the president will cook up something or there was something that gives him permit to do that. So I'm not making those claims. But what if indeed that is proceeds of game?
You know, like the simple answer to the claim that the 4 to 8 million US dollars that was stored in Palapala is due to the income generated from the sale of wild animals. It's a lie. And he knows that Cyril Ramaphosa is lying to the people of South Africa. He even went to lie to his own members in an ANC conference in Limpopo. That is a pure lie. And that is why he can't come out in the open to mention just how much money was stored there. It's a lie because the regulations that deal with the sale of game and auctions and everything else do not permit for cash transfers in the manner that it is. That is one in terms of what happens. But also, the people who can bring foreign currency into the country are authorized dealers in terms of the South African Reserve Bank regulatory processes. And there is no foreign dealer, there is no authorized dealer of foreign currency who has been involved in game trading who brought foreign currencies. They will try to create it post facto now. But we know as a matter of fact that of all the authorized foreign currency dealers, none of them are involved in the trading of wild animals, as Ramaphosa would want to portray. So he's basically lying to the people of South Africa, and we must not sugarcoat that to say that it's falsehood, maybe he made a mistake and all of those things there. Remember that that is how he lives. He's got a double standard. He has got double personality. Of a person this side, he presents himself as an anti-corruption crusader, a clean man who's fighting corruption, who must arrest everyone else except himself and his close circles and his faction. But on the other side, he is involved in money laundering. He is involved in bringing in of foreign currencies through his private plane, which he cannot be able to. These are not allegations, these are facts. And that is why he is not willing to subject himself. He's utilizing, he's abusing the power of being a head of state to intimidate everyone else who's going to come out with credible, proper information to disapprove him. The Reserve Bank cannot come today. Not even one person in the Reserve Bank will come to say that there is between 4 million and 8 million.
You don't believe in the independence of the Reserve Bank?
No, the Reserve Bank is autonomous. That is why it must come to give an open and transparent answer as to just what happened. How did 4 million to 8 million US dollars find itself in a farm of a president, of a sitting head of state in Limpopo without proper clearances that have to occur with all the monies that are brought from outside of the country into South Africa? Yeah. So that has to be dealt with much more transparently. And we're watching very closely as to what is going to happen in that regard. The Financial Intelligence Center has never dealt with that case. Yeah. They must then come out openly and without any fear of intimidation. The Sovereign Revenue Service as well must come out clear in terms of just what happened with that money movement. Right. The banks as well must come to the party because they've been closing people's bank accounts for unlawful money movements and all of those things. Money was moved, 6 million rand was moved out of that stolen money from Ramaphosa's farm, was transferred to Namibia, was utilized to buy houses in Cape Town, to buy cars, to buy a lot of other things that got to happen. And all of those people were bribed under the auspices of Ramaphosa, 150,000 rand each, cash, given to all of those people to remain silent.
And you're saying that is in the bank? Those 150,000?
No, the 150,000 was given in cash. Yeah. That is what the affidavit of DG Arthur Fraser says, that each and every one of those people who were involved in the crime were given 150,000 rand each.
That will still need to be tested at this particular
It's not disputed. Yeah. It is not disputed.
Well, I mean, he hasn't admitted to it. It's not disputed.
And of course, he's trying to play a delay tactic when he is trying to write a script, a fictional script. He's a script writer of a drama now as to what is going to be the fictional story that is going to be created as to just what happened. But we know as a matter of fact that there are millions that were stored not only in Phala, in his other farms and other properties as well.
The appointment at the Treasury of the acting DG, you've issued a statement on it. Why are you rejecting this appointment?
Look, in February this year, we wrote a question to the National Treasury to ask as to what are the retirement ages of all the directors, deputy directors general in the National Treasury. And Ismail Momanat's retirement is in August 2022. It's like few months away. So how do you appoint a person who is supposed to be handing over the reins to the other people? How do you appoint such a person as an acting director general? But even if that is the case, it's not like Momo Niat was not a de facto director general of National Treasury. So they've always been doing that he has been in control of the National Treasury from 1995 on behalf of the rogue unit, on behalf of a faction that is controlling the financial movements and the macro and microeconomic policy options that South Africa has to pursue. He has been micromanaging all the 16 entities of the National Treasury, inclusive of SARS, of GPA, of GPF, of all the PIC and all the institutions that are under Treasury. Go and check the agendas of the Standing Committee on Finance in Parliament. Almost all the time, whether it's legislation or reporting by institutions of the state, it is Momoniat who is speaking. The DG has never prominently come to National Treasury to lead any policy discussion. We cannot have a National Treasury that is individualized around one individual who in any way has not done very well. Because if you were to check the manner in which South Africa does not know how to control its finances, with wasteful expenditure of more than 60 billion rand year on year, there are no systems to contain that. With an economy that is not growing, National Treasury is obliged by law to coordinate macro and microeconomic policy. Yeah. But the economy has not been growing, has been shrinking. We've got a rising debt.
We are out of time.
And all of those things. So we reject Momoniat because...
What's the reason why you believe he will not retire in August?
You can say already that they are making him to be the acting DG. They are possibly going to violate their own retirement laws and try to keep him in office for as long time because he serves a particular factional agenda of the establishment, of protecting the interest of the establishment at the expense of our people. So we reject Momoniat's appointment as an acting DG, although he was a de facto DG, but we reject him occupying that office because he has not been useful to this country.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming through. That is the Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Fighters.